Testing 1 2, testing 1 2.
All right, we are calling to order this regularly scheduled board meeting on Tuesday, September 12th. We will now do a roll call. And it froze.
Here.
Sorry. Student Trustee Garcia Bustamante.
Here.
Trustee Rosenbaum. Here. Trustee Kahn.
Here.
Trustee Hopwood.
Here.
Vice President Boyd.
Here.
President Davidson.
Here.
Superintendent Wells.
Here.
Okay. Sorry. We will now do the reading of the AUSD mission statement and meeting norms.
The mission of Albany Unified School District is to provide excellent public education that empowers all to achieve their fullest potential as productive citizens. AUSD is committed to creating comprehensive learning opportunities in a safe, supportive, and collaborative environment, addressing the individual needs of each student.
Meeting norms. Maintain a focus on what is best for our students. Ensure a safe environment for all views to be expressed, treating each other, staff, and the public respectfully. Endeavor to find common solutions to issues through collaboration without sacrificing one's beliefs in what is best for students. Make a commitment to effective deliberation, each one listening with an open mind, while others are allowed to express their own points of view, even if one disagrees.
Okay, we will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Please feel free to stand and/or join if you would like. Okay, we did take action in closed session this evening, and we approved the district's goals and objectives for the 23-24 school year. And we will now take questions on the agenda or a motion to approve the agenda. Rosenbaum?
On the agenda, there's a mistake in one of the placements of one of the issues. Item 10B, Independent Contractor Services Agreement between Albany Unified School District and LA County Office of Education, was to be brought back as a review and discussion item. And so we either need to pull that or move it. I was hoping that we would have a broader discussion on questions of literacy, and I've been communicating that to our superintendent, and maybe looking at the take that we're taking and looking at if there's a different way to do business. So that's motion.
Would you like
Otherwise, I move the agenda with item 10B moved to review and discussion.
Okay. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Okay. We can, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, all opposed? Nay. So the agenda passes, and we will have item 10B as item 9B, a review and discussion instead of a review and action item. We will now take public comment for matters not on the agenda. If you're here for public comment on items not on the agenda, make sure that you have filled out a speaker card and handed it over to Julie, and then you'll come up to the public comment podium, and please make sure that you use the microphone. We are going to host our ATA representative speakers first, and we'll do 2 minutes for each of you.
Hi, everyone. Was anyone else at the stroll on this weekend? Yeah. So the stroll was amazing. We had a bunch of our members who were out at the stroll. And it really reminded me how one of the really cool things about working in Albany is getting to participate in community events like the stroll, and getting to be part of the community. And also kind of made me wish that more of our teachers were able to live in this community, because when you commute out each day, you don't get the same kind of engagement that you get when you live here. I mean, I think we all know that very, very few of our teachers live in Albany. Almost all of us come from Richmond, Oakland, outside the school district. So one of our members at the high school made me aware of the fact that there is a massive new development going in. The UC graduate student housing, I think 761 units coming in. And she had a great idea, which was, what if just a few of those units, 3 or 5 units, could be reserved for teachers? And I don't know how excited at this prospect UC would be, but it would be a huge, huge thing for our members. We have members who are in, a couple who are renting and a couple who are in less than optimal accommodations in Albany who have had some issues with their current rental situations. And I know that it would be so nice for them to have some, a couple of those. So, Dr. Wells, I know we spoke a little bit about this previous, but just to put on the board's agenda, to bring it to your attention, that idea of getting a way for our members to live in Albany. And with that, I want to introduce a few people we have to speak about our bargaining priorities tonight, just like we had last week, and I'll let them introduce themselves. So, thank you.
Hi there, Dr. Wells and board members. My name is Christine Feuerstrader, and I am a second grade teacher at Cornell Elementary. I've taught in Albany for 26 years, and have always been very, very grateful to be a part of this community. I work with dedicated colleagues and a very supportive community. I'm here tonight to express my concerns regarding our ever-increasing class sizes. Sadly, it was 10 years ago that I stood in the same position. Unfortunately, it was a different board, different superintendent, and this room was packed with teachers and parents, and they were outraged that our kindergarten classrooms were packing 26 children into them, while looking at our neighbor Berkeley, who had capped their school class sizes. As educators and proponents of education, we all knew that children's emotional and academic needs cannot be met in such large classes. At that time, the board was quick to act and make sure our class sizes were reduced, understanding that families came to Albany because of its great schools. Our district chose to reduce class sizes and maintain its reputation for being able to provide its students with some of the best education in the area. After COVID, I thought packing our classrooms with 26 children was a short-term decision due to the upheaval of COVID. However, the trend is continuing. This year, the district has once again packed our kindergarten through third grade classrooms with 24 to 25 students. And based off of experience, those numbers go up throughout the year. In my classroom now, I can fit 25 desks. That's okay. Never mind.
It's okay. I'm not gonna cut you off. No, it's
okay. Thank you. During the past few years, I've also sat through many meetings addressing the needs of our most disadvantaged students and how we can provide equity to all of our students. The irony is that small class sizes is exactly how to offer equity to our most disadvantaged students. Teachers simply cannot meet the demands of all students with large class sizes. So I'm asking the board once again to please reduce our class sizes and keep them low so that all children in Albany and future generations have the opportunity to receive the excellent education that Albany prides itself on. Thank you for listening, and I hope we can find a permanent solution and not be back here again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Great to see you tonight. Before I begin, I just want to give a big shout out to Ayush, who was one of my students many, many moons ago, and it's so good to see him sitting up here in such a respectable position. My name is Sarah Bukowski, and I'm a sixth grade teacher at Albany Middle School. Let me put on these. I'm here to speak to you tonight about class size reduction. Currently, our sixth grade classes have anywhere between 28 and 30 students in them. There are many challenges when we have this many students in a classroom. One challenge is the increase of students' needs and being effective in meeting those needs. We recognize that the opportunity gap has become an issue in our classrooms, and even more so since at-home learning during the pandemic. Having a large number of students only magnifies this gap. We simply cannot meet all students where they are and do our part to reduce the opportunity gap. It's ineffective to have such large class sizes. With smaller class sizes, we as sixth grade teachers can have a greater impact on students' learning. One of the ways we can do this is by collaborating with our staff who support students in positions outside of general education. Collaboration with our special education and counseling department will further support our students with IEPs and 504s. Collaboration with our COBRA study and COBRA tutoring teachers will impact our general education students as those students learn to navigate their time management skills and daily assignments. Collaboration with our mental health and counseling departments ensures that we can approach our most fragile students with great care and sensitivity. This type of thoughtful and intentional collaboration takes much time and strategizing to meet our students' needs. We can do this sort of work when we have fewer students in our classes. One aspect that is very special about sixth grade, that it is the student's first year of middle school, a major transition year in the life of an Albany student. Getting all students and families to buy into the new school systems and expectations takes repeated teaching, communication, and patience. Onboarding our students and families is a priority for sixth grade teachers that impacts all of our students and is most effective when our class sizes are smaller. These are just a couple of ways smaller class sizes would positively impact sixth grade and beyond. Feel free to chat further with me or any of my sixth grade colleagues about the benefits of smaller class sizes. We've got lots of really great ideas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a disclaimer, I'm letting the ATA speakers go over their time because they're representing all of our teachers, so we're going with that, even though usually I'm pretty on it. Welcome.
All right. Does this work? Yep. All right. Sorry, I'm just not used to hearing the sound of my own voice, but it's pretty nice, actually. All right. Don't worry, I'm not going to go over time. I'm just here to reiterate a couple talking points that the Special Education Bargaining Committee has come up with. First, I want to recognize that there's a real challenge hiring special education teachers and special education teachers for our most marginalized and at-risk populations, those in the SDC classes. And I think the below talking points really help with some of the recruitment. A lot of SDC teachers, like myself, when I was coming to the district, really was thinking about language in the contract and talking to teachers in the district about their experience. And I think changing some of the contract language could really help with that recruitment and help fill some of those vacancies, which is ultimately just going to be better for our students too. I think that's empty classrooms don't really serve anybody, and it just kind of makes me sad. So we're asking for 55 minutes of daily prep time for all the education specialists and the speech and language pathologists as well. Providing paid collaboration time between SDC teachers and regular education teachers for mainstream students. Reducing resource specialist caseload to 24, hopefully with no more than 12 assessments per year. Reducing SDC class size limits to 11 with no more than 6 formal assessments per year. I mean, it's probably a lot. And then also establishing speech and language specialist caseloads at 50 students and establishing school psychologist ratios of no less than 1 to 500 students. So I think a lot of these changes are just going to really help the brand. And I think that's one of the most important things. And last, I'd just also like to say thanks to all the paras, too. I don't like to come and take the spotlight without really standing on the shoulders of giants. So, yeah, there's a lot of great paras in this district, too. So, thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Before I start, do I give you this? Okay. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm here because after many email attempts to have Superintendent Frank Wells address an issue that is important to me and many other Latinos, I haven't had any success in getting a response from him. My email is about the usage of the word Latinx in AUSD. The word Latinx is not representative of all the Latinos, especially the majority, according to a Gallup poll Only 4% of Latino Americans in the United States use this term Latinx. I'm a proud American who has fought in a war for his country. I'm grateful for my nation for giving me everything I have, but I'm also conscious of our history that is not taught about in our classroom, the one that tells a darker past. How would you feel if you were to wake up one day, someone told you that who you are, your identity, culture, roots, language is wrong, that you are now something else? Although this might not sound familiar to most of you, it sounds very familiar to Latinos whose roots come from countries that the Spaniards in the United States once occupied and forced their ideology. How can anyone demand, obligate, and shame Latinos into submission? Latinos are being expected to obey and forget who we are, just like the Spaniard conquistador brutally made our people do once. People want us Latinos to fall in line, as the United States once demanded our ancestors, and when they didn't, they faced embargo. In this case, Latinos are being shamed and being told that they aren't being inclusive. Although our languages was largely imposed on us, we made it our own, and no way was it designed to exclude others. This is our language. What people from our country are doing is dictating to others to call themselves based on a misconstrued understanding of our language that most have never even practiced using in different Latin American countries. I ask you here today to please include the word Latinos when addressing the masses. That is why I urge you to use Latinos and Latinx community in the school curriculum and in all of your publications. Thank you.
Can you stay for a second?
Yeah, just a couple of clarification questions. It's important. I know you were working with Dr. Ann Shin about that request, and my communication with her, and my understanding was that your request in your letter, and what I think I heard today was you wanted the district to start using, instead of what we've been using, Latino/Latinx. Is that correct?
You can use either version, Latino/Latinx or Latino and Latinx community. As I pointed to you, the Black/African Americans also requests of this. And so it's the same for us. We're not all the same. And as the majority have already pointed out, this is a misunderstanding of our language from an American, North American point of view. So thank you.
Okay, so good. You answered my. We want to take advantage while you're here. We want to get clarification, so bear with us.
Yeah, no problem. Go ahead.
So in your email, you mentioned the Aries communications, because I brought this up last week in our acknowledgement, and I just want to make sure, if you see somewhere where we don't have this, can you please just send a message back and let us know so that we can make the repairs?
Oh, for sure.
Okay, great. Things may go out that different people are sending, and we may miss something in it, so please just be in communication on it so we can get it right everywhere.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. We really appreciate you coming. We have one. Oh, you know what? Well, we're not supposed to. You can comment. Yeah, you go ahead. Great.
I just like clarification. Is it the X in Latinx? Is it because, I mean, I think a lot of people have been using Latina because that works better with that language of Spanish. So my question is, does Latina work better?
That's a great question. I actually made research on this, and the majority of Latinos want to be called Latinos. And if you choose to use something else as a personal identification, then that person requests that as such. In the meantime, what I'm saying is, I don't want to exclude how you feel, but I want to make sure that you include how we feel. So for that reason, if you want to use that word, we can add it to the vocabulary, but just please don't forget the rest of the ones whose voices are being shamed into saying something else, even though from our roots, it doesn't make sense. So, and it's nothing against anyone. It's just that what I'm saying is just, I am sharing the perspective of others, of the masses.
All right. We really appreciate that. We are going to do our best understanding that there are parameters that the government sets out, some of our communications and things as well, so those may be in wording that the government has sent out, but we will do our best in Albany originating correspondence to make this happen.
I appreciate that. I think you're referring to the word Hispanic, and we can get into that, but I understand where you're coming from. All I wanted to do is just to get your attention. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Oscar. I am a student of Cornell Chinese School. I am also a third grader. If Chinese school could be expanded to 4th and 5th grade, I would be very happy. And yeah. Thank you for your time.
Wow, what a good job. I think he said it all. I mean, what can you say after that, really? Wow, I'm listening. It makes sense to me.
Brevity and transparent.
Yes.
Just to the point, right? Good evening, everyone. My name is Scarlett Zuo. Yesterday, I proposed expanding the Cornell Chinese program to 4th and 5th graders. I want to express our heartfelt gratitude to the board members and also ACC director for your prompt responses. We also appreciate the assistant superintendent's recent visit to the classroom and to understand the program's needs. Your dedication to our community and proactive approach are admirable. It's heartfelt to know that our concerns have been taken seriously and we feel heard. Tonight, alongside dedicated parents and our wonderful children, we represent the Cornell Chinese program community. We are grateful for this opportunity to address you. The Cornell Chinese program was initially created to fulfill the need for Chinese language education, and it has excelled in this endeavor. 17 years ago, Ms. Hong, equipped with training from China's most prestigious institution for educator development and further enriched by Stanford, was entrusted to build this program from the ground up. Her unwavering dedication and expertise have been invaluable asset to our community, and we deeply cherish both her and the program that she had nurtured. In summary, we earnestly urge you to strike a balance between student numbers and teaching quality, implementing a cap of 12:1 for the student-teacher ratio, and prioritizing admissions for students valuing language and culture. We kindly request adequate space and designated teaching area if we expand. Moving forward, while we acknowledge the challenges, we trust the wisdom and dedication of Education Board, the Cornell Principal, and ACC Director to find innovative solutions, accommodating our growth while upholding our program's core values: quality teaching, cultural enrichment, and language skill development. Thank you for your time, consideration, and continued effort to shape a brighter future for our children.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Wong, and my husband is Ben Rubin. Our daughter, Olive Wong Rubin, is a first grader who's been attending Cornell Chinese after-school programs since kindergarten last year. Like other families here, we are seeking your support to extend the after-school Chinese program to 4th and 5th grades. We are here to share our family's story. So first, and this may be a surprise to some, although we live only a couple blocks away, Cornell wasn't necessarily our default choice as an elementary school, because one of our top priorities was giving Olive access to Mandarin instruction. We were considering charter schools like Yuming, out-of-district schools like West County Mandarin School, and private programs like Su Yun. However, after a lot of research and learning about the quality of the Chinese after-school program led by Hong Forrest and Betty Liu, it was an easy decision to enroll Olive at Cornell. So it was the Chinese after-school program that convinced us to enroll Olive at Cornell, and we are very happy with our decision. Second, the Chinese program does not only benefit its students, but it can also benefit the greater student population at Cornell. Just last week, during sharing time, Olive led a mini lesson with her entire first grade class, Ms. Sofia Rivera's class, on Mandarin greetings like hello and how are you. We heard from Olive and her teacher how special it was to share the language with her classmates. Isn't this the type of exposure one of the greatest gifts of a diverse, multilingual student body? And then lastly, and this is the most personal to us as a family, thanks to the Cornell Chinese program, Olive is able to communicate with her Chinese grandparents in a way she's never been able to before. Imagine hearing from your grandchild for the first time say thank you and I love you in your native language with perfect pronunciation and intonation. It's deeply meaningful. Again, we ask for you to consider expanding the Cornell Chinese program. It truly is a gift to the family, to the families, and to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
Hi.
My name is Hui Chang. I'm the father of Ethan Chang here. He is in second grade at Cornell. And I wanted to come here and show my support for this initiative as well. I'm a first generation immigrant from China. I grew up in rural upstate New York. We did not have the great schools that we have here in Albany, and we did not have a Chinese language program. And as a result, I lost most of my fluency in the Chinese language growing up. And it has been one of my biggest regrets in life. And so when we started Ethan in Cornell, that's one of the reasons why we enrolled him in the Chinese program. And we're very grateful to be in the program. The teachers are amazing. The space is not amazing. It's a very small room. It has a curtain divider. One side, one teacher teaches on one side, another teacher teaches on the other side, separated by a curtain, so there's noise, a lot of noise going around. And then I've also learned that, Ocean View also has a Chinese language program, and theirs goes through 5th grade. And for anyone who's learned or tried to learn a second language, continuity is one of the most important things, right? So if we had to take him out of Chinese language program in the 3rd grade and then put him back in middle school, those 2 years of gap will be pretty detrimental. And the last thing I learned is that space or lack of space seems to be one of the major reasons why we don't have a 4th and 5th grade Chinese language program at Cornell, which is a little puzzling because Cornell is one of the only elementary schools that does not have plans for renovations, right? So we have 2 very new elementary schools, and I've heard that there are plans to move the admin offices of this district to Cornell to take up extra space. So it's a little bit puzzling, and I'm hoping we can find an equitable solution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, President Davidson, and to the board, I just want to assure that we would go back and revisit how we make sure we have continuity at all of our schools with our language programs, not just the Chinese program who's represented tonight, but our Spanish program as well. So we will circle back with an update for you regarding that.
Thank you to all who came and spoke. You are welcome to stay. We will not be offended if you do not stay, now that it is 7:30. We really appreciate you all coming. We are now going to move on to our approval of the consent calendar.
President Davidson, excuse me. We have 2 public comments in the
Oh, you know what? I'm
Zoom.
sorry. I am blocking
okay,
my
thanks.
own screen. Let's finish our public comments on here. I'm out of practice since we had our last meeting without this. Welcome.
Hello? Can you hear me? Hi, my name is
We
Aaron
can.
Weber. My daughters go to Cornell Elementary. I just have a really quick question for the board. I'd like to know when the 2024-2025 school year is going to start. This has usually been posted in the spring, like a year and a half ahead of time. Like the 2023-2024 calendar got posted in like May 2022. But the 2024-2025 calendar hasn't been posted yet, and I just wanted to know, when there'll be a decision about that, and when we'll get to know when that school year is going to start. We just need to do a little bit of advanced planning for the summer next year. Thank you. That's it for me.
Stay on the line for a second, please. Superintendent Wells is going to.
We're hoping to have that out in the next couple of months. We're working with our bargaining organizations as we begin to grapple with holidays and the 3-day, the 4-day weekends, winter breaks, and those kinds of things. It's not that simple as just putting one out. We have to put one out with some relative agreement with our bargaining unit members and other stakeholders. So we're guesstimating we're hoping before Christmas break, we can have that out and posted.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi there. Nair Castillo McIntyre here, father of 2 Cornell students. My son, Ulysses, would very much like to support his Cornell schoolmate, Oscar said. So I just wanted to put that on the record. And second, on our family's behalf, we would like to express our support for the ATA's request, especially for planning time with their peers for those students who are in the special education program. As you know, the law requires the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires that students with disabilities be placed in the least restrictive environment, which by default means the general education classroom. And for that to happen successfully, general education students need to be able to partner with the different service providers that they work with. And in the case of my daughter, that's a rather extensive team. So there needs to be a lot of coordination amongst all of them. And the same is true for many other students in the district, whether their teams are big or small. And lastly, in terms of compensation for our teachers, we know that throughout the nation, that is a real challenge. Teachers are grossly underpaid. But today I learned that a place like San Joaquin Valley, the district is attracting teachers in special education with a $10,000 bonus, sign-up bonus, and cultivating the teachers, paraeducators that they have on site so that whenever there are teachers that are planning to retire or leaving the district, there's already a cadre of educators ready to step in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's all our call-ins. I don't see any other hands raised. Okay, we are now going to move on to our approval of the consent calendar. So we'll take questions, comments, or a motion.
I'd like to pull item 7C just for some clarification. That's the job description for the wellness specialist.
Would you like to make a motion in conjunction, or would you like to wait for?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consent calendar with some questions on item 7C.
Okay. So we'll just take our vote and approve it, and then we'll just approve item 7C separately. I'm going to go ahead and.
Well, why don't we just talk about
Just
item
do it real
7C?
quick?
Yeah, sure. And then we can approve
right.
the whole. I get confused. So
That's okay. Here comes our HR director. Go ahead.
Are you going to withdraw your motion?
Trustee Rosenbaum is tabling his motion for a moment. Are you doing that?
Yes, I am.
Drawing, tabling the motion.
Yeah.
Great.
Let me get it on my, no, okay. I've got it. I'm in the wrong place. Anyway, so from memory, so it looks really interesting, but exactly why, what role does it fill? It sort of sounds somewhat like a high school dean in some ways. And I didn't mean to blindside you with, I should have let you know this. But it's so, what is it that we need and where are we going to do this?
So a little background.
Yes.
So at the middle school, we have the safe space for kids. We call it S3.
Yes.
And it was previously staffed with, you know, a wellness coordinator that has been relocated to the high school to fill a need there. And so we want to backfill that, but we did pare down the position a bit. And part of the reasoning was, you might remember that at the June 28th board meeting, we reduced a student support coordinator position, and we did that because the grant funding that we were using to fund that was reduced when the governor passed the budget. So we felt, you know, we never want to lose something that important, but we couldn't continue to fund it. So we sort of pared down this position so that we can continue to provide some support to the S3 and the wellness program there at the middle school. And so we're bringing back a new position to replace what we couldn't afford anymore.
I get it. That's the clarification I wanted. What's the qualification again for this person? I got it.
Experience working with youth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I'd like to change my motion to approve the consent calendar. New motion is move to approve the consent calendar. Thank you, Vani.
And I'll second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Thank you, Maria.
All opposed? Okay, the consent calendar passes, and we will now move on, thank you, to our student board member reports.
All right, so the first thing is that we had our first official non-leadership student advocacy committee meeting where we discussed student survey results that we sent out to middle and high school students last year and the year before. And we also asked some of the new members about ideas and concerns that they have about the school as of now. And one thing we discussed was better active shooter preparedness in our school. This is a topic that I feel really strongly about and something that have been advocating for and also talked about in my interview for this position. So that's something that I'd like to see get implemented. And another popular topic amongst the students is better bathroom cleanliness, and also lack of supplies is a big problem. And as of now, though, our main priority is junior SAC, which I think you can probably talk more about.
Yeah, it's basically just a student advocacy committee at the middle school. It is in our bylaws that we have to have that, and we tried establishing it last year, but things kind of fell out, so we're really hoping to get that done this year. And then for the high school, tomorrow is back to school night. Come between 7 and 9 p.m. And then financial aid night is October 25th from 7 to 8:30 p.m. via Zoom.
And for Albany Middle School, we have our second annual Hispanic Heritage Month celebration on Saturday, September the 16th in the AMS courtyard from 2:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m.
That concludes our report.
Madam Chairperson,
All right.
I missed something before, and I just want to clarify that I made some corrections on the minutes, and Julie revised the minutes, so she can either tell us now or you can read it later in the news.
You want me to read off what you
Sure.
submitted? Oh, sure. Okay.
There were some errors.
There were 2 changes to the consent count on the minutes from last meeting. One second, let me pull it. On page 6, changes to the consent calendar. The last sentence, only contracts that are routine, standard, and renewed should be on the consent calendar, and items that are not, is inserted, recurring, are first-time contracts, and are controversial should not be listed under consent. And the second one was on page 7, for item 8I, the independent contractor services agreement between Albany Unified School District and Los Angeles County Office of Education for the TK through 5 literacy professional development program, Getting Reading Right. Motion to table this item and bring the contract back at a future meeting for review and discussion, not action, by Trustee Rosenbaum.
Thank you. Sorry, I missed that.
It's okay.
Just
Thank you
wanted it be in the record.
Thank you for everyone doing their part on that. Okay, we will now move on to our review and discussion. We're going to go to item 9A first, which is our agreement with Team CivX LLC for our parcel tax consulting services.
Madam Chair, before we start that, I just wanted to acknowledge and want to give a thank you and acknowledgement to Trustee Ron Rosenbaum. You were absolutely right with the review and discussion. I take ownership for putting it on the consent. So thank you for catching that.
Welcome.
Shall I pass it to CBO Kim or, okay, all right.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to take a few minutes for Ms. Shen to put up the presentation. So this item, for the purpose of this item is to review the agreement with Team Civics for the partial tax consulting services. However, we would like to discuss and have more informative discussion for the board for the partial tax. Okay, the next page. The overview. So we are going to go over the historical data of our financials and partial tax comparison and some key terms, what that means, and what is really the partial tax. Also, our goal for this partial tax revenue, and how do we spend this partial tax revenue in Albany. Next. Okay. So as we close the 2022-23 year, our financial shows a deficit of over 2.8 million. When you see the red line and the very last on the right side, $2.8 million. In other words, we received $21 million as a revenue, and we spent about $44 million. And it resulted in $2.8 million in loss. So as you can see, for the last 7 years, that you see that this is the biggest deficit spending we experience. As we continue to have this deficit spending, you will see our ending fund balance, very last bottom row. We will call it also reserve. Also, we say as cash in the bank. Will be reduced, and it is going down, and it is at 3.9 million as of June 30th, 2023. This is also at the lowest point in last 7 years. So the California state requires 3% of this reserve balance, and if we continue to deficit spending like this year, we will not be able to maintain 3% state required reserve this year also, unless we have more revenue coming in or address significant expenditure reduction, also means cuts in our budget. Next. So why are we at this place? Are we spending more than other school districts? So let's look at our revenue per student, more specifically for average daily attendance. So attendance is about at 95% of our student enrollment. But let's use just per student for easy math. So here is the funding for students in our neighboring district compared with Albany in Alameda County. As you can see, can everyone see this case? So in Albany, in the very last column, you see the total revenue for $15,681. This is per student funding that we receive. Okay. When you look at our neighbors, we are at the lowest. Let's look at Berkeley, $22,174. So that's the second line item and the very last column on the right. So that is $6,400 difference per student. It also means if we apply that to 3,500 students in Albany, that is $22 million more that the Berkeley gets than us. So $22 million is really $50 additional funding in our total revenue, because earlier when you see our total revenue was about 41 million. So 22 million is really additional 50%. Okay. So now let's look at the third column here. It says federal and state funds. So when you look at it, so how do we get the Fed and state funds? So the base funds we get is for all students. And after the base funds, we get additional funding for specific students groups. It's called unduplicated pupil counts. English learners, low-income students, families, and foster and homeless students. So when you see this in other school districts, when you see higher numbers, that means they have those population students more than us in Albany. Okay, so in that column, we do not have a control over this. This is how state fund the school districts in California. And we can move to the left column, donation and fees, which is smaller pie in the chart. So I'm not gonna just talk about it. I'm gonna move to the first column, partial tax. So here is another big difference we have, okay? Let's look at Berkeley, $6,100. Albany, less than $2,000. So this partial tax is a local revenue source that we have more control over. And when I say we, really means we as in community, Albany community. So when you look at Berkeley over $6,000 and $2,000, the difference is over $4,000. But let's just use $4,000 times 3,500 students. That's $14 million. Okay? And that also means we are receiving at about 70% funding level compared to Berkeley. That really means theoretically, we could only, or we should only be able to afford 70% of what they do. Everything 70%, including programs, services, class size, any compensations, everything 70%. However, we are providing just as much as Berkeley or other school districts in programs and services. Okay, next. Thank you. So this is a potential budget risk. So another thing as you hear or heard, the Measure J, so we have two partial tax. So one of the partial tax is called Measure J. It generates about 4.5 million. And out of that, we received about 590,000 from Golden Gate Field. And they announced that they will close this fall and sell their property. So if this gets transferred to nonprofit or state, district will lose 590,000 in partial tax revenue. And one of the budget risks we have is low enrollment. So the trend of declining enrollment in state and Alameda County, we may not be able to maintain what the current enrollment is. And also, another risk we have in Albany is the increase in program demands at elementary level, expansion of TK, ELOP program, and childcare limits capacity to increase enrollment in a classroom-wise. And state budget has been positive, but it's declining and confronting risks. With this low reserve that you see earlier, the structural deficit, Albany will find it very difficult to continue offering competitive compensation and maintain these critical programs and services to our students in our community. Okay, next. So what is partial tax? It's a special tax by local government unit, such as city, county, school district, or special district, and approved by 2/3 of voters. And this tax is imposed in parcel of real property, but we should not be confused with the property tax. And the partial tax is not based on the value of real property. Next. Okay, so this is our goal for partial tax, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Wells.
Yes, as we would, if we had it our way, this is how we see the parcel tax working for us based on what we know with our own data. In order for me to be super transparent here. We look at for example, our teacher salaries two ways. We look at it in total compensation, and we look okay there. But if we look at it in salaries, we're at the very bottom. Our teacher salaries are the lowest and among the lowest in Alameda County. In order to be able to meet our goal, one, and recruit and retain our teachers and can be competitive, we have to bring the salaries significantly to at least average in order to be able to compete. We want to maintain our programs and even make them better, but you can't do it without the adequate resources to do that. So that's one. Two, we want to maintain and expand our critical programs to provide high-quality experiences in safe environments to all students, including our music, drama, languages, counseling, mental health, academic intervention, athletics, campus security, and small class sizes. Our kids and community deserve all that, but you can't do it without the adequate resources. And that's why we're in need of a parcel tax that would benefit our community, and more specifically, our kids.
Next. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we currently have two parcel taxes that contribute to our revenue, Measure J and Measure B, total of $6.8 million. Okay, next. Measure J, $4.5 million. This was passed in November 2009. So this is how it works. $591 annually per parcel for residential unit, 11 cents per square foot of land area for non-residential unit. Now Measure B, $2.3 million that we receive is $490 per parcel in 2022 and 24. So this Measure B is interesting one. So for instance, the homeowner in Albany with 800 square feet home pays $490 annually, whereas Target with almost 400,000 square feet pays also $490 annually. So as we can see, the flat tax rate created inequity. Okay, now let's look at how we contribute this partial tax towards. So Measure J, hire retained librarians, mental health services, course offerings, athletics, preserve small class sizes, attract and retain highly qualified teachers, other financial support for district programs. Next. Measure B, attract and retain exceptional teachers and counselors, protect funding for science, art, music, language, theater, library, and reading and math support, limit class sizes, keep schools safe, keep classroom technology and materials up to date. So based on our revenue, sure, that's fine, thank you. So based on our revenue structure, where we get our funding from state is less than the state average, as you see earlier, but also our local revenue partial tax is lower than our neighboring school districts. However, we value our programs and services for all our students and value recruiting, retaining highly qualified teachers through competitive salaries. But our current revenue structure cannot support all of this. We are facing a big reductions if we don't have extra income coming in. Now, the district is exploring the possibilities of increasing partial tax revenue and restructuring on Measure B. Our first step will be to poll the community about their thought around the schools and new partial tax. Again, this contract with the Team Civics does not commit Albany to place any partial tax on the ballot. Should the board decide to place the partial tax on the ballot, this would be the timeline here. So contract approval, sorry for the typo, approval with Team Civics for polling. So this will happen in the next board meeting as a review and action item. And we schedule a tentative board meeting. So once that happens, they will be busy getting the surveys and pollings and a lot of things gonna happen. And then we get to bring the result to the board October 24th meeting. And then at the same meeting, the board can discuss placing a partial tax measure on the 24 ballot. And November 14th, at the board meeting, the board vote for placing the partial tax measure on 2024 ballot. And if you can go down a little bit, thank you. So the deadline is the December 6th, and the election that we have here as an example is March. So the difference of the March and November election in 2024 is if we decide to do so, the board decide to do so and pass in March, we get the additional revenue, a different structure, in December of 2024. But if we miss this, and if we do it in November 2024, then we will get the new partial tax income in December 2025. So there will be about a year difference in our revenue. So this concludes the presentation. Now we are open to the board discussion and any questions.
And let me just highlight the year difference. We're talking about millions of dollars, which can help or not help the district budgets. So thank you.
We will now take questions from the board. Trustee Hopwood.
I had a couple of points of clarification and something for the record. On page 5, and thank you, CBO Kim, as usual, but on page 5 here, there's just, and this is not really relevant discussion about whether to impose a parcel tax on the ballot, but lower enrollment. It says here a trend of decreasing enrollment may not be able to maintain current enrollment. We have increased enrollment right now, and I know at the last meeting I just wondered about revisiting that conversation. Obviously, you presented in June, and then a year and a bit ago, POW School presentation about decreasing enrollment. Does that, I mean, that doesn't necessarily change anything in terms of parcel tax, but I think we do need to revisit that conversation about enrollment. That was my first point, but
sure.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. So we will do that. We have the plan to revisit the items and have a presentation for another enrollment projection. So I think we are blessed this year that we do have a up in enrollment, but the trend really shows a declining. So back in like 7 years ago, our enrollment was over 3,800. But now we are a little over 3,500.
Yeah, no, thank you. But I know things have changed with districts releasing kids. That's a recent development too, which has had an impact. Thank you. And then my next point for the record was that there was a recent decision in a San Francisco appeals court about Alameda Unified School District. Parcel taxes typically don't depend on property size, and they were successful after 15 years of litigation in having that overturned. So you clearly know about that, and I'm surprised not to see any mention of it here. And I'm just wondering, is that something that this company, Team Civics, will explore? It seems that we may not be restricted, and perhaps there's additional revenue to be had.
Yes, certainly.
Okay.
Can you just, who else has this team worked for, just so we get an idea of like why we're picking them and why we're approving a contract with them?
Sure. So this team, yes, thank you for that question. So this team has worked with Berkeley Unified and Alameda Unified, and Albany for the last partial tax, Measure B, and also our bond.
So this is the same group that worked with us. Thank you.
Yes, for in the past. Mm-hmm.
I feel a lot better.
And they would they be working with like a committee? So on the bond, with the bond oversight committee, would any of those committee members be asked to come back and sort of just, I don't know, be involved at all or anything?
Yeah, we would have the same structure setup that we had back in 2020, and they would continue to provide the expertise to that group.
Okay. Trustee
So-
Rosenbaum, do you?
Me? Okay. I don't want to cut anybody else off. So your presentation made it very clear and answered a lot of my questions that I had internally. I was wondering why we needed to move on such a fast track. You just explained it beautifully. So my only concern is making sure that we engage the public to understand why we're doing it this quickly, and also that it will be a split tax, so that a lot of the new income will come from corporate rather than from individual homeowners, and that would create a larger amount for it. So basically getting out to as many places as we can so that we don't get a lot of pushback, which will happen anyway, but this is we have a lot of bright people in this town, and once they can assimilate all the information, like I might have just done, then I think it's a good thing. And they did a good job on the last one. So.
Trustee Khan, did you?
Sorry.
Oh, it's good.
No, it's okay, because I was just going to say, I know we've talked about how we'll be bringing this to the Finance Committee as well, I assume, and we'll have a chance for the Finance Committee to discuss this as well, I assume.
Budget Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm tired.
Sorry, one more question. I also read that apparently last December, a San Francisco Court of Appeal ruled that parcel tax initiatives proposed by community members or parents or not school boards, those parcel taxes only need a simple majority to pass on a ballot, whereas a school board proposed parcel tax needs a 2/3 majority. Does it have to be the school board that initiates this, given that we have this engaged community, people who've actually run these campaigns and really kind of taken the reins on parcel taxes, if we were to do it if a community member was to step up, for example, or an organization?
Well, we're going to have our experts here on our next meeting on the 26th, and we're going to give them that question ahead of time so that they can come articulate it as well, along with our attorney who works with us on parcel tax, Harold Freeman. And so we will circle back with that answer.
And I think one thing that's good to draw similarities between the two is the city just did something similar with their emergency response measures, and they took sort of a flat one and reworked it very similarly. And I was there frantically doing the math as I was voting because there was not a lot of discussion around how it would impact smaller homeowners in Albany. And I was, okay, so that we own a commercial property and a small residential property in our family, right? So how's it going to impact us? Well, it turns out not a lot, but like bigger places. And then I started going through, well, how many bigger places do we have in Albany that this actually would make a difference? Okay, so Belmont Villages is paying $490. Sprouts is paying $490. Starbucks is paying $490. Like any of those that are in Albany are only paying that little amount, and they are generating a lot more. So that's how I got comfortable with that one, but it was definitely not part of the conversation leading up to that election. So I think that would be really for us to fact check and just make sure, but also really be aware of like reassuring people, if it's true, that this is not going to have a huge impact on smaller pocketbooks. Yeah. Any other questions from the board? Okay, any public comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, we are going to close our discussion on the parcel tax, and we are going to move on to our second review discussion, which is item 9B, formerly 10B. The Independent Contractor Services Agreement between Albany Unified School District and the Los Angeles County Office of Education for the TK through 5 grade literacy professional development program, Getting Reading Right.
And this will be facilitated by our Senior Director, Michelle St. Clair.
Okay. Good evening, Board President Davidson, Board Trustees, CBO Kim, and Superintendent Dr. Wells. I'm here tonight to go over our review our literacy plan that I brought to the board on May 8th with a more thorough presentation on what it entailed. But tonight I'm going to kind of recap it, and I heard a request about our adopted curriculum and supplemental curriculum, so I want to clarify that tonight a little bit too, and answer some questions you may have. Slide. So tonight I'm going to review, like I said, next slide, sorry. I'm going to review our adopted curriculum, our supplemental programs, and help to understand our 23-24 school year professional development plan that's focused on literacy for TK through 5th grade. Slide. I want to start out with data because data is what should and does guide all our decisions. In Albany, for kindergarten through 5th grade, I'm using FastBridge data from last year, and you can see that 74% of our students in our district as a whole are performing at or above proficiency or benchmark. Okay, but that also means that 26%, or about a quarter of our students, are below proficiency. I just want to point that out. Slide. So keeping in mind that 74%, I want to break this data down a little bit for our subgroups. White and Asian students, you can see, are about 6% more likely to be performing at benchmark or above. And for our Black students, the rate of proficiency goes down by 10%. For our Latinx Latino population, the performance percentage goes down 20% for students performing at benchmark. And then our English learners perform about 47% less likely to be at proficiency, and our economically disadvantaged are at 61%, which is 13% lower, and our students with disabilities are at 44%, which is 30% lower than our overall average. So keeping that in mind, we know, and research shows, that children who don't learn to read by 3rd grade are more likely to remain poor readers, to fall behind in other academic areas, and in the long term, those students are less likely to graduate. I want to emphasize, too, that that's what this professional development is really geared towards, those subgroups. Okay, so here is kind of like a timeline of our adopted curriculum. What is our adopted curriculum? It's units of study in reading and units of study in writing. It is through the Columbia Teachers College Reading and Writing Project, which is authored by Lucy Calkins. It was approved for adoption in 2016 by the board, so that was about a little over 7 years ago. We've been using it. Teachers were provided training in it, and we've been using it for those years. Just a few years ago, some curriculum reviews were done, one by Ed Reports, one by Achieve the Core, and other nonprofit agencies who reviewed reading curriculum. They found that with the units of study, it was lacking in some important areas, including phonological awareness and phonics. It said that it did not meet expectations and that it lacked a cohesive and intentional scope and sequence for systematic and explicit instruction in phonological awareness and phonics. And there were some other flaws that were pointed out as well. So in response, the creator of the units of study in reading, Lucy Calkins, rewrote her curriculum. And then she repackaged it and put it for sale, basically, in 2022. We as a district looked at that, and we knew that we needed to do something about this. And there was a decision made with administrators and teachers to purchase supplemental materials that were specifically toward phonemic awareness and phonics. So the decision was to purchase foundations for kindergarten and 1st grade. And then just recently, well, we purchased SIPs at the same time, which was just for intervention then. And then we more recently put SIPs into our 2nd and 3rd grade classes. So SIPs it stands for Systematic Instruction in Phonological Awareness and Phonics, and high frequency words is part of it too. Okay. next slide. So why the training? Here's another reason. 3 of the 4 elementary, and this is a quote from Ed Week in June, just recently, 3 of 4 elementary teacher preparation programs don't adequately cover all the core components of reading instruction, and many still teach methods that run counter to evidence-based practices. Okay, we know that. I was not taught as a teacher, when I went through my program, I was not taught how to teach students how to read, despite the fact that I taught kindergarten, first grade, and second grade for many years. Another point is that over the past decade, 31 states and the District of Columbia have passed laws or implemented new policies mandating evidence-based reading instruction. So some of that is starting to stir in California. We are not as proactive as other states, but we did just recently pass, there's a bill that was signed into law requiring screening for dyslexia. And Governor Newsom is calling now for literacy experts to create a literacy roadmap, he calls it. And that roadmap is to emphasize explicit instruction in phonics and phonemic awareness and other decoding skills in the early grades. Slide. So what is Getting Reading Right? It's offered through the Los Angeles County Office of Education, a public agency. It helps teachers to effectively use the curriculum that we currently have adopted. It's not a new curriculum. It helps us to identify the gaps and figure out how we can fully serve our students and teach them to read with all components. It provides sessions that are focused on helping teachers hone their Tier 1 teaching, but also their Tier 2 and how to pull target groups and focus instruction. It also really emphasizes supporting diverse learners, understanding that children learn to read in all different ways. We can't have one method. And it uses anti-racist instructional practices in order to help improve reading proficiency and build the educational equity gap. Slide. So Getting Reading Right is professional development on teaching reading. It's focused on using data to guide instruction. And we've been doing a lot of that lately, and it'll teach us to just to drill down a little bit deeper than our FastBridge data. It covers evidence-based practices in all 5 pillars and all the components of reading, which include language comprehension, vocabulary, language structure, verbal reasoning, literacy knowledge, and then the other side, which is word recognition, phonological awareness, decoding, alphabetic principle, letter sound correspondence, sight word recognition. So both learning to read and reading to learn. Getting Reading Right is not a curriculum, and it's not only focused on phonics. Next slide. So I rolled this out in the spring, and I asked for feedback from teachers just to get a feel for how they felt about this, where they were with this, and they were a majority overwhelmingly enthused about this. I put some of the comments in here. I'm hoping to get more time for spelling, vocabulary, grammar, and background knowledge. I'm actually thrilled to get some training. I'm glad everyone is getting the same training in reading so that we can align what we do across grades and schools. And as a librarian, I'm eager to see how I can bring this into my lessons. I'm just going to add one more element, is that just last week it was announced that the Teachers College Reading and Writing Project is dissolved now. So they won't be producing that curriculum anymore, and Lucy Calkins is no longer the director of the program. And I also included here on the last page the board meeting from previous, which goes into more depth about the training. It has a scope and sequence. I encourage you to look at that. It talks about what each session entails. And I just want to emphasize again, the teachers are super excited about it. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming back and giving that all to us in such a concise way. I just want to say that, when I taught first grade in Albany Unified, I said, oh, we're using Lucy Calkins, interesting. So what are we doing to teach kids, like, the rest of reading. And it was the first year that we trialed foundations, and everyone was so excited that we were bringing it in, but it's definitely like a melding of how to put everything together. And so I'm excited to kind of see more about how this works with what we have in place right now. And then also today, I was just reading that there's now going to be a push for using things that are the science of math, because we're all talking about the science of reading, but we're not teaching like the basics of math. We're giving kids word problems and like big games and concepts and expecting them to absorb how to do addition, but we're not explicitly teaching these things. So once I saw that, I said, well, okay, yeah, we really need things that are like scientifically based on how we teach these core skills. So I appreciate seeing more about this and how that does that. Yeah, and sorry to just take it first, but I'll let anyone else want to wave a New York Times story?
I've got a lot of stories. So yeah, the discussions on how kids actually learn reading, writing, how they learn is all over the map, including, this is a very good article that came in yesterday. Embedded Literacy Project loses Columbia's support, but it's very good because they show it as a mixed bag, in that there were really good things in Lucy Corcoran's work and some things that didn't pan out the way they should. I get real cautious, and I think a lot of people in the field are really cautious about the approach that we should teach in teaching our teachers. It's not a curriculum for the students, it's a curriculum for the teachers. I hear a lot about this at home because my wife has got her PhD in cognition and literacy, and works with a lot of people who see other sides of the question, and what's right for all kids. There's nothing that's right for all kids, and we have to be very careful. So when we talk, I shared a book with Dr. Wells today, and it's called "Don't Think of an Elephant." And "Don't Think of an Elephant" is where did I put it? George Lakoff, who's an expert in literacy and linguistics, particularly in cognitive science. And he's an amazingly well-known professor at Cal, and my wife's favorite professor of all time, because he's just a wonderful person and really has clarification. He talks mostly about how we use language so that we can create a vibe of something that might not be what we're really talking about. So I would feel very cautious about, for example, we have an ex-president who uses the word steal, and it creates something's been stolen, even internally, because Lakoff talks mostly about politics, especially how conservative politics and liberal politics don't see things, and the truth is different for different ways we see things. So when we use the word science of math, science of reading, I have 2 degrees in science, so it's like, I want to see the science. Yes, there have been cognitive studies, but then you can't see how a child develops relationships through an MRI, which is where a lot of the research that I've read up on has to do with what we call cognitive science, in that which way does the brain fall. Now, my wife could talk about this a lot more. So I just want to make sure that we, I can see the benefit of this, but I also would like us to maybe have a workshop and bring in some experts in the field just to clarify for ourselves and for our community and I have some contacts. I could bring in the ex-head of the...
Are you asking about our professional development, or if we bring back an item about our reading approach in our district?
Right.
Okay.
Now, so I would like to hear from people who have a different input.
But so are you asking that, aside from this, you would like us to add an agenda item in the future, which is for the board to get a presentation or have a workshop on different modality, different ways of teaching reading? Or I'm just trying to get at what you're hoping to get.
Yeah, let me just answer that, and then, yeah, thanks, Frank. I've read a lot of the research that, I don't think this is the best way to go. It's better than nothing. Also, the data that we have of our school community is, compared to other communities around us, is pretty encouraging. What we need to do is learn, and my wife is writing a book on how developmental science and for teachers, especially around reading and writing. It's gonna, and talk about all the different ways that we should be teaching people who are gonna teach us in the schools. Acknowledging that a lot of the things that hold us back are institutional racism and, in this day and times, conservative politics, in that you can't do certain things, you can't read certain books, which is
why we want to emphasize teaching all components so that we can capture all students' needs. And I think that's a very important piece. And if you're proposing a different type of professional development, I'd be very interested to hear what you're talking about, because I've done extensive reading, I've been to multiple workshops, and I'm not hearing other theories on reading besides this hundreds of thousands of research papers that were studied for the National Reading Panel.
And stuff that's coming out from universities who don't actually practice teaching. They have science that...
Right, Calkins.
And some of that is, But I mean, I talked to one of the consultants at LA Unified School District, who sees it a very different way than the county sees it. So he volunteered. He said he would fly up just to talk to us. So I don't know what I'm proposing. I'm not proposing anything. I just want to express my caution. I gave a lecture, and I'm sorry for that, but this is what's in my heart and in my mind.
Trustee Rosenbaum, let me just say this. I appreciate it. This is one of the great debates, and has been for a long time, since I came into the profession 33 years ago, about reading and how to teach reading. Mm-hmm. What was quite telling to me in this presentation, and in the article both Michelle and I read last week about the dissolving of the Lucy Calkins because of all the holes and gaps, and yet the board approved a faulty program in 2016, let's call it what it is, because we didn't have the collective expertise to rule it out because it had so many holes. Fast forward 7 years later, we realized that we had to fill those holes with supplementals. And so we would be looking at, I'm assuming in the immediate future, a new curriculum where we can have this wonderful, rich discussion. But what we found out through all our research is, even my research, where I was a practitioner, and in order to close and eliminate the achievement gap, it can only be done through building teacher capacity. And the way we do that is through ongoing professional development of how to teach reading. Mm-hmm. In the case of one of the elementary schools where I was principal, we more than doubled our scores in the state of California because we significantly improved our teacher capacity through this process of ongoing professional development, something that teachers were craving and begging for. And then they end up getting the governor's top student achievement award because of that, and they asked us how we did it, and it was through this process that Senior Director Michelle St. Clair is proposing, and the teachers are eating it up. Who doesn't want to learn? Who doesn't want to provide the best instruction to their kids? And so this is what we are proposing, that we continue with this kind of capacity building so that we can get better at teaching our kids reading so they benefit. While others have that great debate, we're going to have it too, because we're going to have to now identify a new curriculum. And at that time, we're going to invite all parties to have this rich discussion. So I'm willing to go along with moving ahead with this, and thank you for the discussion, and I really appreciate it. I've done a lot of reading, studies, and I've also been a practitioner now since 1971. I'm not that old. Well, you outranked me.
Let me just finish my sentence, and then I'm going to shut up for the rest of the meeting. I got Sonia laughing. But I really think that it behooves us as a district and as a board to continue educating ourselves and looking at all the ways that kids learn, and bring in experts, You know, we can get them without it costing us anything. Which I don't like spending our money on something that's not going to work. But educating ourselves, yes. So I go along with what you said, Dr. Wells. I'm done.
Trustee Hopwood.
Thank you, Director Sinclair. That really clarifies things for me. I was just wondering, with the fast bridge reading and this, I mean, a quarter of our students are performing below standard, which is concerning, and my priority would be for teachers to have these workshops so they can start to use those skills in teaching children. When do we repeat? Is that an annual assessment? Do we have more data in a year, for example, so we could perhaps compare whether things improve?
I'm going to be bringing FastBridge data on October 10th, I believe. So I'll go over that with you. The kind of interesting thing about this program, and the next session is on this, is that they ask teachers to do, they do FastBridge, and that will identify, it's a screener, it'll identify students who are performing below proficiency and far below proficiency. Basically, there's those tiers, and they are having teachers do then what's called a core diagnostic, so that you can really pinpoint exactly what area is it. Is it fluency? Is it phonological awareness? Is it phonics? Is it comprehension? So that's the really, what I really believe in, and I've been around education a long time too, and I've seen the pendulum swing, but what I really like about this, it is all, everything that they do is backed by studies that have been done and research that's been done. So I really don't have, I can't see contesting the idea of really drilling down and figuring out what is it that's keeping kids from reading. And I've received a lot of emails from families and parents, both when I was a principal and now, requesting this, just to keep that in mind too.
Just an aside, some of the things quoted in this article talk about the flaws in some of the research. So nothing is pure.
Yeah.
There is no science.
Yeah. I like to call it evidence.
Yeah, evidence-based. That's fine, evidence-based.
I broke my promise.
All kinds of evidence.
Oh, what a surprise.
Is the core diagnostic you just mentioned, is it through FastBridge, or is it?
No, it's just a separate. There's a lot of free online resources that we can use. We're trying to, we're using SIPs, we're using foundations, we're using Calkins. We're trying to figure out, with this knowledge that we're gaining, we're going to be able to pinpoint a little bit more what does work and what doesn't work. And teachers have years and years of experience, especially in this district. We have a lot of veteran teachers who have been teaching kids to read for a long time. And I really trust what they think about this, and they will push back if they think it's, not something useful.
This is not our only professional development around reading, is it? We're doing other professional development around reading, or do we plan to do other professional development around reading?
We will. I feel like this is sort of the base or the foundation so that we can determine what's next. And I'm hoping to form some kind of a committee so that the teachers can work with me to figure out what will come next.
Okay. Any other board questions? Trustee Khan?
This is actually a question for the board. I was going to ask if we're comfortable moving this item back to review and action, especially considering the next training session is taking place before our next board meeting. It doesn't feel fair for us to receive services without actually fulfilling our part of the contract either. I know this was kind of like a cart before the horse situation where we definitely should have, had a contract before the training started, but still we are receiving services, and it's only fair that we uphold our portion of it. And also just having spoken to some of the teachers, I've heard really positive feedback, and that teachers are excited about it. They have found this to be extremely helpful. Having had a student who is struggling with reading, I've seen how well the teachers really do this, and if there's anything that can help them fill the gaps that we are noticing, then I'm all for it. So thank you for leading this effort, and if I may make a motion to move what is now 9B back to 10B.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll roll call this vote to move this item back to review and action, which will be followed by another call for a second motion to approve that action item. Okay.
Student trustee Deodar,
Yes.
student trustee Garcia Bustamante,
Yes.
trustee Rosenbaum,
Yes.
trustee Khan,
Yes.
trustee Hopwood,
Yes.
vice president Boyd,
Yes.
president Davidson.
Yes. Okay, so we have now voted to move 9B back to 10B, which we are going to take out of order, and we are going to take a motion to approve our contractor services agreement.
I'll make a motion. Oh, we're going to do that, or we're going to? Yeah,
We're just gonna
we're
do
that
it.
one. Yes, I'd make a motion to approve the what is now again 10B as the agreement between Albany Unified and Los Angeles County Office of Education for this literacy professional development program.
I'll second.
Okay, we will just roll call it again for consistency.
Sure. Student trustee Deodar,
Yes.
student trustee Garcia Bustamante,
Yes.
trustee Rosenbaum,
Yes.
trustee Khan,
Yes.
trustee Hopwood,
Yes.
vice president Boyd,
Yes.
president Davidson.
Yes. Okay, so we will not have that on our next agenda since we've taken care of all of it. Thank you to our board for keeping efficiency at the head of this, but also thoroughly discussing and making sure that we are doing what is best for
And
kids.
I want to thank the board and everyone for following this process to bring more of the issues out and know that we have a place to go from here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, we will now move on, and just FYI, there were no hands raised on that one. We will now move on to our review and action item 10A, which is our 2022-2023 unaudited actuals financial report.
And Madam Chair, President Davidson, as you know, this is done by our CBO annually about this time frame. And so at this time, we're going to turn it over to our CBO.
Thank you, Dr. Wells. So let's see this presentation. This item is for the board to adopt the 22-23 unaudited actuals. So this report is very different from other reports that I report out to the board quarterly. This is not a projection. This is actual numbers, a fact. So there won't be any changes. Okay. So by September 15th of each year, the school districts are required to submit an audit actuals report to the County of Education. And this report will be audited by our independent financial auditor and report out to the board in January of next year. So the impact to the current year. So the closing of last year's book, 22-23, affects the beginning balance of this current year. So the actual fund balance for all funds are updated and adjusted, and this new adjustment will be seen on the first interim report. And unspent grant carryover funds are posted for the new year, which is the 23-24 current year, after the board adopts the unaudited actual report. So 22-23 financial highlight. So the average daily attendance, this is how we get funded, right? The district was funded based on average of the most recent 3 prior years ADA, which is 3460.31. So if we were able to get funded at this current year's ADA, it would have been 3363. So we are better off with this new formula that state created. Okay. Now, this 22-23, we also received the Expanded Learner Opportunity Program, ELOP, of over 900,000, and we also got one-time Fed and state funding with the Art Music Discretionary Block Grant and Learning Recovery Emergency Grant. And we also received the State Facility Funding Grant of $4.5 million. And they are all recorded in this book. So I just wanted to mention about this Prop 28. So please do not get confused with other our art grant. So this Prop 28, I get a lot of questions from everyone. This is a copied and paste from the CD website as of yesterday. The funding, you can see the highlighted allocation is not available yet for this current year. And we don't know how much we are gonna get exactly, and we don't know when we are gonna get this. Okay, we are hoping and we are waiting to get more clarity from the state. Okay, this is the combined general fund. General fund is really where what we see all the operation happens. And there's a two-part in general fund, unrestricted and restricted. So you can see, let's talk about restricted column first. The restricted column is where we record all our Fed and state grant with a restriction. It can be a time restriction. It can be a purpose restriction. So for example, ELOP, we will give you the money district, but you can only use for this purpose and for this period of time. Same thing with educator effectiveness grant and along with this other like learning recovery grant and other grants. So those are all recorded in restricted side, which district do not have a control over this money. Okay. Now let's look at the unrestricted side. So this unrestricted money on the first column is where everything else happens. Okay, so let's look at the historical data and focus on unrestricted because this is where we have a control over. So again, you will see a big deficit of 2.8 million. This is the largest deficit that we have occurred. And the ending balance at the end, you will see 3.9 million. This is also the lowest in the last 7 years. So if you ask, where are we financially? My answer is, well, financially, we are at the worst. So this is just where we are, and this is very alarming for us. The $3.9 million, that is about 6.4% reserve level as of June 30, 2023. Let's look at the state average reserve level as of last year. So Unified School District has over 22%, the first line item, okay, versus 6.4 for our Albany Unified. So this is again the, I just wanted to really emphasize why are we at this place? Again, because our funding level is just not there. 70% at other neighboring school districts. So I'll just say one thing that I haven't mentioned earlier. So Berkeley receives $54 million in partial tax, and Berkeley is about 3 times, I would say, bigger than Albany. So when we divide it by 3, 54 million divided by 3 is about $18 million in partial tax, and we have about $6.5 million. So there is a big difference there. Okay, so let's now look at the expenditure by object. Okay, so this object is defined by the state. Let me make it a little bigger. Okay. So when you look at the salaries and other employee benefit means payroll taxes and health and welfare benefits, which is our Kaiser plans. So those are 84% of our total expenditures. Okay. So we have 16% of our total expenditures to do everything else. So this is also expenditures, the same expenditures, but by function. So this is another, the state category that how we see our expenditures. So you will see instruction, 61%. So this is mostly what happened in the classroom. Instruction-related services, 12%. This is usually what happened at the school site. For example, our principals' salaries and benefits, and our any other support you see at the school site. Okay. Pupil services. This is addressing our mental health or any supports for the students, but not actually happening maybe at the classroom per se, but more of the outside of that specific classroom. So that's up 7%. And auxiliary services. This is more of field trips. Other support boosters, and those are just 1%. Community services, about 1%. This is mostly 99% is pool expenditures. And administrator costs, about 8%. That is like salaries for our admin, including me and Ms. Shin, and our technology staff, and what else? Everything else, attorney cost. Yes. Yeah,
Can you just-
insurance.
Sorry, can you just say which one was the pool, the plant services?
The community services at 1%. Yes.
Okay.
But the pool also has some are in the plant services for their maintaining items. Okay, and the plant services are more like custodian crews, maintenance crews, anything our director of maintenance does in this category, and also including pool services. This also includes, let's say, utilities, gas and electricity. Okay, so that's where we are. Okay, so the general fund contributes to other restrict programs in restricted general fund. So in this year, we contribute over $5 million in special ed because this is how state funding works, right? General fund students special ed students are general fund students first. So the state funding formula works as like, okay, district, you need to contribute to the special ed program. So this is where we are. And also ongoing maintenance. So that is statutory about 3% of our total expenditures that state requires to address any facilities. Okay. And good news in this, I have to put it here still and leave it there. Albany Children's Center and Albany Aquatic Center, we did not contribute any this year. Albany Aquatic Center did amazing job, and they expanded all the programs and added a lot more programs than ever before. And Albany Children's Center, we were blessed that we got extra funding, one-time funding, but we got extra funding in Albany Children's Center. But this one is a little tricky because we don't know how the state funding will work in next year. We might not have any additional fund coming in that we are not aware of, then we might not be in this position. Okay? And I know that our director at Children's Center will have a presentation at the next board meeting. Okay, and this is other funds. District administrates about 10 other funds with expenditures of over $56 million.
Can you clarify that a little bit more?
Sure. So other than the general fund that we went over a few times, this is, let's see, the building is really, when you see on the right top, building is where our construction happens with our bond, and that's what it recorded there. And another child development, this is where our ACC program happens, and cafeteria services, also our food programs. So the capital outlay project I add at the end, that is where we receive now the state funding of $10 million, $4.5 million. We are recording those expenditures in that fund. And the bond interest is where we pay the bond interest for $95 million bond. Okay, and then here is the details, as you can see. Okay. So the next step, so we will continue to monitor our enrollment because that drives our revenue, and work with our budget advice committee to continue to identify ways to balance the district budget. And we communicate this to our stakeholders, including our labor partners, about our fiscal situation and strategies to balance the district budget. And the final steps for this report. So this report presented tonight will be submitted to the County Office of Ed, the CDE, and district auditors. And the financial statement, this report, are contained in the annual independent audit, which will be presented in January board meeting. So this concludes the presentation for unaudited actual. And then, yes, any questions? And
Okay. Anybody? Board comments, questions, clarifications? I just want to reiterate, I know there was a lot of hard work to get the Albany Children's Center and Albany Aquatic Center to be at 0 in those line items, like an incredible amount of work that goes above and beyond just basic school district work, and that is amazing to see. It's really cool, and it's really amazing to offer those services to our community and hear how valuable they are, but also see that it financially makes sense, hopefully, continuing, and for right now. I had one more super quick question. When we, because I know we're the, like, SELPA for the, like, we're in the counties, or a certain SELPA, and we have the administrative unit. Does that just mean that we are, like, overseeing? 'Cause I'm saying it doesn't, like, cost us anything. We're just in charge of the budget for that? Or
Yes.
the fund?
Yes, so we are in charge of our SELPA unit, Emory, Berkeley, Alameda, Albany. I'm missing one, Piedmont. Thank you. So yes, we do bookkeeping for, so we receive the money in Albany, and then we allocate the funds to those school districts. So that's one side, and we get the indirect cost for that.
We get the indirect cost?
Yes. So usually, like what we talked about, indirect costs that we charge the programs for any accounting, payroll, hiring, making payment, that's what we do.
Okay, so there is like a compensation for the work that our district is doing for that?
Correct.
Okay, great. And is that the case on all of the other funds?
All of the other funds, yes, we also charge indirect costs for child development, food services, and the others, no, because this is just a construction that we don't charge.
Okay,
So
okay.
These are basically pass-through funds.
Yes, that is correct.
That's the way I look at it.
Thank
Simple.
you, yes.
But pass-through funds that even though we're doing work for are not like costing us money to
Right.
do the work for them. I just want to make sure I understand that all the way. That's great. Okay.
So sorry, I just wanted to show you this one, Fund 10, because Trustee Rosenberg mentioned about pass-through. So the revenue and expenditures we get is exactly zeros out, and you don't see any fund balance in the first line item for the SELPA.
Okay. I guess one other question, you said right now our ending fund balance, what am I on, slide 7? We're at 3.9 million, right? And you were saying that's 6.4%?
Correct.
Okay, and we have to have a minimum 3% reserve?
That is correct. For this current year, which is 23, 24, and next 2 years.
Okay, so we just have to keep that in mind always. And then, how is this impacted, though, this general fund? Because we were required last year to sort of reallocate money in the general fund. Like, we had to sort of reclassify funds last year or the year before because they didn't want so much just sitting in like unrestricted. So how does that play into what we're seeing here?
So yes, we had a resolution and that we were committed for those funds because we didn't want to show more than 10%. That's what state requires. So then we put aside the money to address declining enrollment and other needs. And this has been released also by the board last year.
With these numbers, mean we really have to be careful as we look at the future for our reserves.
Yes, because we released all the funds we committed in the past.
Okay, so whatever we committed, we already released all of those.
That's
and they are
correct.
not, there is like no other pot from before. We released those.
That is correct.
Okay. We released them for really good things. Okay. I just want to make sure we're all, and if there are more questions on that.
Is that a really quick question? the same slide, actually. So I can see that there was, since 2016-17, there's been a steady decline until 2020-21, which was obviously pandemic one-off money, right? And then back to the decline again. But it seems quite a dramatic decline between the last 2 school years. Just out of interest, you may have already covered it and I missed it, but what was the reason for that sort of dramatic decline between 21-22 and 22-23?
Sure. So good question. Simple answer is really we have spent a lot more money, right? And in where? So I would say 85% of our budget is again on personnel. Okay, so that's a big chunk of our budget. And now the other 16%, 15%. I would say, for example, I looked at the gas and electricity bill. Before pandemic, it was about $500,000. In 22-23, we paid over $1 million just for the gas and electricity. So even though we feel like the inflation is maybe like, I don't know, less than 10% or maybe more, but it really shows that gas bill from $500,000 to over $1 million in few years. It was comparing before pandemic and after pandemic. And same thing with our insurance, also went up double. So those are the 16, 15% of the pot that I'm just giving you an example.
That a good argument for moving away from gas entirely, which is what we have to do.
Well, yes, if we can have more solar. Yes.
We expect to see, so if we're not committing funds to ACC and the Aquatic Centre, can we expect to see that general fund perhaps not decline at the same rate next year? Is that going to make an increase? We're not going to be declining at the same rate or at all? Or
So this 22-23 year of the deficit of $2.8 million does not include any contribution to those Aquatic Center, Albany Children's Center. So it will help because it could have been more. It could have been over $3 million, right? So it certainly helped the district. So in the future, we will have to make every single effort not to be in the position to contribute to those programs.
Can you talk about the change in our health and welfare costs? Have those gone up appreciably as well, correct?
Yes. So in 24 year, the health and welfare went up by 11.78%. So that's a big factor as well in this deficit spending.
Along with PERS and STIRS.
Yes.
Yep. No.
Looking back on the numbers, what we were contributing for ACC and the Aquatic Center is basically been gobbled up by our utility increase. So where that could have offset some of this for those other increases, it's gone completely to that. Yeah.
Right. For also, I wanted to say, so due to pandemic, we need more support in mental health and other areas. So then we actually do have a lot more support in that area. And since the pandemic funding, one-time funding is gone, general fund is paying for extra services.
And our kids still needed mental health. So we had to make a value call. Thank you. And although the money was, we received millions of dollars for mental health, and when the pandemic, as we knew it initially, went away and so did the money, our kids' needs were still there. And so we had to make a value call and figure out how we're going to pay for it because of the crisis that we were addressing daily. And that cost significantly, but we think it's worth the cost.
Thank goodness.
But we're still expecting funding from the state around mental health, aren't we? Because isn't there a new effort right now to allocate more funding for all schools around mental health?
Yeah, it's a new bureaucratic effort to do that, but the money is moving so slowly. We thought we'd get it last year, then we thought we were going to get it this year, and we just had a meeting with the county superintendent, and so we're not quite sure when we might get it. And yet, in the interim, as you know, the kids still need the services, yes. So hopefully there's help in the immediate future.
All right, we really appreciate this thorough presentation as always, and you keeping us as good as we can be, given the realities. If there are any public comments on this item, this is the chance. Going once, going twice. That's public comment. We will now, do you have another question, or?
Oh, no, I was going to make a motion.
Okay, or a motion.
I was just going
Wait.
to move to adopt the 2022-2023 unaudited actuals financial report.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Seeing none, the unaudited actuals report passes unanimously. We will now take our superintendent and board member reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair, President Davidson. My report is going to be on the big screen, big movie screen in a moment. I just wanted to take a moment to share with the board some of the things we've been doing. In July, I had a chance to go to Houston for a week, and around another organization I work with around some civil rights issues. And while I was there, I had a chance to spend some time with our chief astronaut, Victor Glover, who's here from who's originally from California. And I talked to him about some of the things we were doing here in Albany. And he's familiar with Albany, UC Berkeley, and things of that sort. And I asked him to come down and speak to some of our kids and families. And to my surprise, he agreed. And so we're working out the details. He is a chief astronaut here in our country. He'll be leading our next mission into space in November. He's been all over the world in terms of the focus as the next person in space. And so that was a treat. He's on the far right. This weekend, I had a chance to speak to a number of educators in Southern California about the importance of leadership. And one of our keynote speakers there was our very own state superintendent of schools, Tony Thurman. And after I called him up, the camera folks said, "Hey, pause, take a picture." And when he got up there, he said, "In order for me to catch up with Dr. Wells, I have to come way down here to Southern California to see him." And so I thought that was funny, but I thought I'd share that with the board. We were talking about some initiative. As I was leaving, he said, "Hey, you want to ride to the airport?" I'm like, "Yeah." So his driver gave me a ride to the airport. It's kind of neat. But he was sharing with me a number of initiatives that he has going on with the state, including mental health. And so he might be the person I need to reach out with and see what he can do to help expedite the funding, because many of our districts are hurting, waiting on the funding in the interim. And so I thought I'd share that with the board. Another slide I wanted to make the board very cognizant and aware of, I'm not going to show it on the slide, is that we don't have any definites, but I had a chance to speak to a couple of attorneys from California when I was in Southern California this weekend. And they were talking about the racetrack in Albany. And one of the conversation and scenarios is that the developers may get it before anyone else. If you guys know anything about the most recent racetrack that we sold here in California was in Southern California, which now is the SoFi Coliseum, where Beyonce performed last weekend, and where the LA Rams play, and they have all kind of housing and retail and all kind of wonderful stuff, bringing tens of millions of dollars to that community annually. We might be in the same situation, but we have to get in front of it. We have to be at the table, because if they do build high rises down there at the racetrack, we're going to need the developers to build us a new school. And I need to be really clear about that, because we have no space in our elementary schools. And so we would be having conversations about whether or not it would be a new school K-5 or a new school K-8. And with the development of apartments and condos, we want to talk about teacher housing. Our teachers need places to live. And so we want to be good community partners with the new developers who may be coming in, but you can only do that if you're at the table. And so one of the things I talked to our president about, or she talked to me about, or we talked to each other about, however it goes, that we need to reestablish our 2x2x2, and that is meeting with UC Berkeley, the city, government, and having good partners and planning around this development. Because if we sleep on it, we're going to miss out on major opportunities, and our kids and our staff will miss out. So I wanted to make you aware of that. Madam Chair, President Davidson, that concludes my superintendent report.
Well, that must be one of the most exciting ones we've had. Vice President Boyd.
I will just quickly say that the Albany Middle School PTA meeting, the first one of the year, was extremely well attended. It was very exciting to have all of that energy in the room, and there's a need, as there is a need at all school sites in our district, for more parent volunteers and more participation, and there's a big push to join the PTA. If you're an AMS family and you haven't joined the PTA yet, please do, and come to meetings. There's a lot of interesting parent ed nights that they have planned and great events for our students, and it was great to be there to kick off the year with them. That's it.
Thank you. So my report is just that tomorrow at 6 o'clock till 7 is the first PTSA meeting at the high school. It's in person, it's in the library directly before back to school night, which is 7 till 9 tomorrow at the high school. It'll be great for as many people to attend as possible. And also just a shout out to the community, or a kind of plea. Emily Starowitz, a teacher at the high school, is setting up a little kind of cafe area outside her classroom. There's a really nice kind of paved bit between her kind of portable classroom and the new annex at the high school. And she's got a few tables and chairs out, which kids are really using. It's nice. Those portable classrooms are quite dark, and so she's got kids out there kind of working at tables and having the kind of groups outside. If anybody has any outdoor furniture, lawn furniture to donate, be great if you could let me know or let Ms. Sarowitz know, and I'd be happy to collect and drop off to her. So that's it. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Bear with me, I've got a couple. One, just thank you again to the superintendent for the book club. It's been, we've been able to have a lot of rich discussion and just kind of work through just how folks are feeling about the book, and just what we all want to see and what we all want to do in our community as we learn from it. And so that's been a great experience. Really looking forward to next Monday's meeting. The Ocean View PTA will be meeting on September 14th at 6:30 p.m., same time as our closed session meeting or special meeting. But we also need a lot more people to join because you can't have a functioning PTA without parents' involvement. But we are planning a lot of exciting events, including the Fall Festival, including our book fair, and we're really hoping to this year focus on getting books in every student hand. And so last year we had a wonderful job of I can't remember how many, but we bought over 1,000 books last year that went into student hands. But this year the goal is really to make sure every student at least gets one book. And so that is part of our effort of building a love for reading. So there was that. The transition program welcomed me into their class as we worked on this beautiful mural, as they're making their new home a space that is reflective of everybody's just an artistic expression of themselves. And so that was just a wonderful project to work on with them. I made a mess with the paint. I'm not the best painter, but it was fun. And then lastly, we had our special education meeting. Just wanted to give a huge shout out to Dr. Biggs, because that meeting was really, really, we were a small and mighty group, but we got a lot of work done. And it was just really it felt good to be able to work through some of the goals and some of the missions for the new school year, what we want to see, what the vision is, and what are the action steps we're going to take towards it. So it was a great conversation that we got to start, and looking forward to the next meeting to, build on that. So yeah, I think I got everything. I hope so. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that I missed the Marin PTA last night. But I will be spending some time on Monday at Marin, and I'll be spending time with Melissa Fole and taking a walk around and listening to what's up. And I'm not going to miss any more PTA meetings or school site meetings. And since somebody mentioned Solano Stroll a little earlier, I just want to shout out to Chris Bryant, who's done such amazing work with the bands, and the music is just unbelievable, and he's done that over the last 17 years, I guess, which is, I remember the day that he walked in cold into the principal's office, which I was occupying at the time, and this is the guy. And I'm so proud of what he's done, among other teachers that I brought into the district, including Emily Serowitz, by the way. So that's my report.
All right, the Cornell PTA had their meeting last Tuesday, the 7th, and that wasn't Tuesday. They had it on the 7th, I'm sorry. They are also really needing more people to help and run their amazing events. This seems to be a common theme. Well, let's all step up and do a little bit more. And I just wanted to share a tiny anecdote that I heard. We've been having a lot of conversations about the ACC programs and our before and after care programs. And I just wanted to share that the feedback I've been getting from students in those programs is that they are exceptional, particularly the Cornell programs. The Miss Elena, who is running that program, the kids come out sharing their stories about learning Spanish with Miss Elena or doing yoga. My own son just shared, my favorite afternoon is when we get to go take our yoga mats and put them on the real grass and we do yoga on the grass after school. And I was like, well, if that's worth fighting for, then I'll just keep coming to the table. But anyways, I wanted to really just express my appreciation and the community appreciation for having that. And I think we heard it again tonight, that these programs really do matter and that we are doing great things. That concludes my report. And I think we need future agenda items. Yep.
I know we mentioned this last school year, but I do want us to work together on a resolution around what's kind of going on around the state and what we're kind of starting to see closer to home with a lot of folks that are working towards excluding our trans students. And I want us to actually be able to do something and stand in solidarity with our students and do whatever, take whatever action we can, and especially if that means in the form of, writing a joint statement of opposition to what's going on at the state level and kind of around some of our neighboring communities or whatever form that takes. I would absolutely love for our district to, hopefully have that at the next agenda. And I'm happy to help in whatever way I can with that.
Duly noted. Thank you for that.
Well, I'm still looking forward to a report on the physical education at the high school, so I'm hoping that comes up soon so we have an answer for some of our parents.
Okay. And seeing no others, I will adjourn this meeting. Meeting adjourned.
Well done.